Hey, E100 readers, welcome to Unit 7. Don't look now, but you are about 2/3 of the way through the Old Testament portion of E100. You are getting the hang of this Bible reading thing, and so congratulations on the progress that you've made. Now, this unit is going to be about how Israel transitioned from the leadership of the judges, which we read about in the previous unit, to the leadership of the kings. You're going to be introduced to Samuel, a remarkable figure. He really marks the last of the judges, but he's also going to become the prototype of the prophet in Israel during the time of Israel's kings. Moses is kind of the first prophet, but Samuel is kind of the prototype for the era of kings that we're entering into. The kings are going to be sort of adversaries of the prophets. The prophets are going to be spokespeople of God who are going to call the kings on their disobedience, point out their inconsistencies, demand that the king, along with everyone else, submit to God and follow the instruction that God has given in the Torah to the people of Israel, that they abide by the covenant, constantly calling the kings out for their pride and their disobedience. Well, in Samuel's time, as was true in the time of the judge Samson, who we've read about, Israel was threatened by the Philistines. And this was a different situation than we'd had with other threats during the period of the judges. The Philistines were a people who had probably come to this land from the coastlands of, or they'd come to the coastlands of the homeland of Israel, from the islands of the Mediterranean. And somewhere along the way, they had learned how to smelt iron. So they had iron weapons, and they're just obliterating the bronze weapons of the Israelites. So this is the end of what historians call the Bronze Age in the ancient Near East and the beginning of the Iron Age. It's a technological innovation which changes everything. So, faced with the Philistines and frustrated by their inability to overcome them, the Israelites demand a king. Why do they want a king? Kings in the ancient world were primarily military rulers, mighty men who could lead their people into battle. So God says to Samuel, don't think they're rejecting you, they're rejecting me as their king. So if they want a king, I'm going to give them a king. That's the way it's going to go. So he gives them somebody who looks like a king. Saul is tall, he's strong, he's got a full head of hair, broad shoulders, narrow waist. He leads Israel for a time and God blesses him, but Saul becomes proud. He's filled with arrogance and he wants to run the show himself. So in his disobedience, Saul then is rejected by God, and God turns to, well, a middle school kid, David, an early adolescent with a sling, who overcomes Goliath, who is this mighty ironclad guy, this champion of the Philistines, who typifies the military superiority of the Philistines. But David, this young boy, fells him with no armor, just a sling and some stones. Really old technology in that respect, because he understands God is with him. And so David becomes the rival to King Saul, and there's a rivalry between them until ultimately Saul is overcome and David will be established as king. Now, as David is established as king, a later prophet of God, the prophet Nathan, is going to come to him and say, God does not want you to do what you intend to do, which is to build a temple, a permanent place of worship for God. David looks at the tabernacle, which is a tent, and he says, this is inappropriate. We should have a palace for God, a house for God, like I built a house for myself. And so the prophet on God's behalf says to David, you will not build my house, but your seed or your son or your descendant will build my house. And I will build his house. I will establish his throne and his kingdom forever. I won't take my loving kindness away from him the way I took it away from Saul. He's going to reign forever. And so that leaves us with the question, well, who is this great king to come? And the rest of the story of the kings in Israel is asking, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? Spoiler, none of them are the one. The kind of king we need is a different kind of king altogether. And if you're guessing that must be Jesus, you would be correct. So, happy reading as you go along. This section of the Old Testament really gives us a framework for lots of productive, helpful Old Testament reading, putting the details into the bigger picture. So the Lord be with you.